Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm pleased to welcome back Lee Harris from Blue Marine Travel. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thanks, Ria. Yeah, all's been good this week. So, how about yourself?
Great. Well, I've been watching you, of course, and I suggest everybody, as I do every week, sign up to you on LinkedIn because you've got, I don't know how many posts you put out per day on LinkedIn, but because there is a lot of activity in the travel world right now, there's a lot of posts that are going out.
Yeah, I think we're probably averaging around about 10 to 20, I think, a day. It's just crazy. We're what are we now? 8 months into the pandemic. With regards to travel restrictions, and there just doesn't seem to be any easing up at the moment.
Well, and I know straight across the face of the board, there's a lot more cases popping up now. There's some countries are starting to sort of go back into a semi-lockdown of sorts. So I'm sure this is going to reflect in the coming months in travel as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's without a shadow of a doubt, to be honest with you. Like I said, it doesn't seem to be much changing with regards to, specifically certain countries anyway. Um, where I am, New Zealand, there doesn't seem to be any chance of borders opening up anytime soon for people. So, there's definitely a lot to talk about anyway over the coming months, that's for sure.
Well, we'll have to keep you around then.
The pandemic's good for one thing. It keeps me on the radio.
Well, yeah. So what's going on in Australia at the moment?
Yeah, so Australia this week, Qantas have announced they're launching repatriation flights. They're going to be from New Delhi, from London, and Johannesburg, and they're hoping to bring home 1,300 Australians currently stuck overseas. The flights will be underwritten by the Australian government, and they'll be operated on a cost recovery basis. The Qantas flights will be operated on 6 return services, 3 from New Delhi, 2 from London, and 1 from Johannesburg. The London and New Delhi flights will operate direct to Darwin, and the airline says the arrival port for the Johannesburg flight is still being worked through, so there's no definite place where it's going to land at this moment in time. It's also, you have to note that even on the repatriation flights, all passengers coming off will still have to do the 14-day quarantine on arrival. The one-way economy fares from London, they're quoting at 2,150 Australian dollars. 1,750 Australian dollars from Johannesburg, and $1,500 from New Delhi. Uh, with regards to these, a COVID test will be needed no more than 48 hours prior to departure, and obviously you have to have a negative test to be able to board the flight.
Do you know how many people have been stranded overseas, citizens of Australia, for these 8 months?
So with Australia, I know at the moment they're still talking around about 34,000 that are still stranded at this time. The worrying thing as well is that I actually spoke to the Department of Foreign Affairs in Australia last week, and they told me the number of stranded Australians that they're getting come through to them is going up rather than going down. So it is a worrying point, especially with Christmas. Obviously, the Australian Prime Minister said he wanted to get them all back by Christmas, which, I mean, in all likelihood, is not going to happen unless they change tact quite drastically in the coming weeks. So yeah, it's still a worrying time for Australians. It's the numbers going up rather than coming down.
Well, how have these people been surviving? Like, that's my question. Is how have they been living if they've been stranded, away from their homes, their families, etc.?
Yeah, I know it's worrying for these people, isn't it? I mean, we're talking, like we said, 8 months now, with regards to the restrictions that have been put in place. So yeah, I mean, whether they're working out, they're still getting paid or whatever. I don't. It just baffles me, to be honest with you, that so many people can be left, not being able to get back to their own country.
And then being charged 2,000, 1,700, etc., etc., to get home.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah, it's worrying, isn't it?
Well, with FLIBS coming out, we did do that special last week in regards to the US. What's going on with domestic travel right now? Because I'm assuming, as I assume that you are as well, most of the travel for FLIBS this year is going to be domestic travel.
Yeah, I would imagine probably domestic travel is going to take up the majority of people attending, isn't it? With regard, obviously we talked last week with regards to the restrictions of trying to get into the country. Um, with the domestic travel, I thought it might be a good idea. Obviously, there may be a lot of people who are going to be traveling by air for the first time going to FLIBS domestically within the US. So just to quickly run through, there's 11 domestic carriers within the US. only 4 are still blocking the middle seat. That to me slightly concerning, I've got to say, bearing in mind how rampant COVID is within the US at the moment. Now, the 4 that are blocking the middle seat are American Airlines, Alaskan Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, and Southwest Airlines. Now, United Airlines are not currently blocking the middle seat, but if the flight is over 70% occupied, they will allow you to change to a different flight free of charge. Um, just also with regards to that, if people go to my LinkedIn also, they'll find there is a spreadsheet on there which I've done. Basically, it's just pointing out the exact procedures that these domestic carriers are taking to keep people safe at this time, i.e. whether they're providing face masks, how regularly they're cleaning the aircraft if it's after every flight, and also with regards to blocking the middle seat.
I actually saw a picture on social media the other day of a guy that actually had put himself in an entire plastic bag.
I wouldn't recommend that because it's not going to end too well, is it? I mean,
I
he could
know,
have.
right? It says right not to be used. It tells you on the directions that you shouldn't be sticking your head in a plastic bag. But here is this picture of a guy, and it's a real picture on an airplane, and he literally has this big plastic. It's a clear plastic bag, but he's literally covered himself in this plastic bag.
It does worry you slightly, does it? He clearly didn't have his mum tell him the story when he was a boy, what's going to happen to him. So, in some respects, I feel a bit sorry for him.
What is that, Darwin's theory?
Yeah, I think it is a bit.
So Heathrow Airport heading over to England.
Yeah, so Heathrow Airport this week have launched a pre-departure rapid testing program for COVID-19. The tests will be available for passengers flying to Hong Kong and Italy only at the moment from terminals 2 and 5. The tests will set each passenger back by £80, so they are quite expensive, and they must be pre-booked ahead of arrival at the airport. Currently, British Airways, Cathay Pacific, and Virgin Atlantic fly from London Heathrow to Hong Kong and Italy. And as it's these airlines and they're spread across the 2 terminals, that's why they're offering it from Terminal 2 and Terminal 5. The airport is stating that it's offering LAMP and antigen tests. These are the ones that are much faster than the typical RT-PCR tests, which must be sent to a lab for analysis. As such, these results will be available within 60 minutes. Heathrow Airport will keep the test centres open for 4 weeks on a trial basis, and then depending on the demand seen from the passengers and the airlines, they may either choose to extend the operation to further airlines and further destinations, or completely scrap it if they decide it's not worth continuing with.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think we're going to see more and more things like this happening straight across the board in every airport in the land, really.
Yeah, I mean, I, it seems to me to be the only way really you're going to get away from quarantining people for 14 days, 10 days, 7 days. Get this rapid PCR test in place. You have it done basically at check-in. If it means that you have to spend an extra 2 or 3 hours at check-in, I think that's probably going to be preferable to 14 days spent sitting in quarantine, which you're going to have to pay £2,000 for or whatever. So it just makes sense to me. Get this rolled out, as quickly as you possibly can to as many places as you possibly can, and fingers crossed the uptake should be quite good.
Well, I mean, we're used to jumping on planes now to commute for work the same way that, other people jump on trains or buses, or get in a taxi cab. That's how essential airline travel has become. So that's any quarantine whatsoever is literally, I mean, especially if you're taking a 2-day business trip, you've got, and then you're back for 3 days and then you've got a 2-day business trip somewhere else. I mean, that kind of takes all of that out of the equation entirely. There is no options. So if these tests are capable of being done at the airport, then maybe we can go back. Yes, maybe you're going to have to add an extra day on just to account for, the extra few hours at the airport, etc. But at least it's closer to normal than what we have right now.
Exactly right. I mean, let's be honest. Even when a vaccine comes out, we're not going to have travel as it was. I just can't see it happening. I can't see it being the same where you can hop on a flight, get off the other end, and go about your business. There are going to have to be procedures put in place, and this just seems to me to be the most sensible one. And the one that's least offensive to people. It literally is 60 minutes. You get your result back on the plane, and then they can do it the other side as well. So you have your testing at the departure airport, you have your testing at the arrival airport, then you're free to go on your way. even if it means maybe following up with a second test 3 or 4 days after you arrive into the country. That's surely got to be a better way to go than locking people down for 14 days.
Well, and hopefully the airlines will include that in the price. It's just part and parcel of air travel nowadays.
You would hope so, wouldn't you? Sense doesn't always follow suit, shall we say? But yeah, we can hope for the best anyway.
Well, you know what? I would feel really sort of not doing my job if I didn't ask you about South Africa, because I have to talk about it's just a need.
No, South Africa seems to be going. It's good. The flights are operating in. We don't seem to be having any issues whatsoever. They had that slight hiccup at the start when they reopened, when there seemed to be some miscommunication between the government and the airlines. That all seems to be ironed out now. Travel's going well. Like I said, we've not seen any issues with regards to people going into the country or coming out either. So, yep, they seem to have it sort of spot on at the moment anyway.
Well, that's exciting news, because that was kind of a back and forth thing for a while there, and it's good to hear that's been worked out. It took only 7 months, but good.
They got there in the end. You know, it was a slow process, but they got there.
Do you know what? I have a feeling this is such a slow process. I mean, it's straight across. It's insane. It's insane. It just beggars belief that these governments the world over are having such difficulty dealing with something that they should be ready for. We are citizens, we pay our taxes in every country. We hopefully elect somebody who is smart enough to, or when you elect a government, you have a whole government. You know, there's a whole pile of people that have PhDs and all sorts of education, and you would hope that, you know, with all those brains in power, that, you know, a lot of solutions would be found quicker than 8 months down the road. But that isn't necessarily the case. So it does make me feel better, though.
Oh, indeed. Yeah, exactly right. Governments are a wonderful thing, aren't they? I mean, it just, yeah, in some respects, I have sympathy with some, not all, I've got to say. They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't, I guess. But on something as big, 8 months down the line, and some of the horror stories you hear, just, yeah, I mean, it beggars belief, to be honest with you.
Look, it's the 8 months down the line thing that gets me. I can understand the first 2, 3 months. I mean, yeah, there's nobody on the face of the planet that could have figured that stuff out in 2 to 3 months. It hit us so quick and so hard, and it was just something we'd never seen before. Cool. 8 months down the road, you don't have your stuff figured out, there's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it does certainly seem like some are winging it, doesn't it? I'm not going to name any names. I mean, people can probably guess who I'm talking about, but it does seem like some are winging it on a wing and a prayer, as they say.
Wing and a prayer, great song, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I, I just wish it would, especially my home country, the UK. I hear about it, I see it. I speak to family and friends there. And it just baffles me. Even you've seen at the moment certain councils within the UK are battling against the Prime Minister now. Surely there must be a way that you can all get on the same page, and find a common ground, because that's what you need to do. You need one approach to get it sorted. And that's half the reason why the UK find themselves in the problem that they are, because they're just not on the same wavelength.
Well, you know what? I don't think it's just the UK. I think Spain as well. They've allowed each autonomous region to make their own decisions based on, which, I mean, in certain degrees, it makes sense, because there are some regions like the Balearic Islands, for example, the Canary Islands, that are with less cases, are showing up with less cases, whereas Madrid is just off the map. So you understand certain areas having different rules, but in the sense of the amount of confusion that goes on as a result of this, just down to blocks, literally blocks. I mean, from what I understand in the UK, people are like, well, I live next door to my friend who is part of this area, and we can't, my next door neighbor can do this, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
So when it starts getting to situations like that, it does start to become really, really confusing, and nobody can blame, the citizens for not understanding.
Yeah, I think that's half the problem, is that you listen to them and you come out more confused when you start. But I always think it's quite an interesting point when you give regions their own powers. again, I go back to the UK. I know that Manchester and the Prime Minister and the government were having a bit of a set to with regards to going to a certain tier or whatever. But how do you? I can't see how you can put certain areas into one tier and others into another, because you've got no way of policing people going from one to the other. You can't, with a country like the UK that's got 60 million people in, the police are not going to be equipped to make sure that people are not traveling between the areas. So if that's the case, you've got no way of ever stamping it out. Literally none.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of respect for the police in the UK either. They don't carry guns. I don't know. I'm not a gun proponent, but I do firmly believe that a police officer should have a gun in the case of an emergency. I just, I feel safer knowing that. But that's just me. So I guess we'll see. Let's hope that 2021 brings better changes, a better year, and we can get back to, and I'm not going to say the normal. I took out the first word because I'm sick of hearing it. But let's just hope that we figure out a way that we can just carry on doing what we do. We can all get back to work. We can all make a living. And yeah, just accept the way things are, and the government start to make some sense.
Yeah, well, we can hope, can't we? I mean, I think we need to put on our New Year's wish list. I think that governments make sense. It's pie in the sky and it's not going to happen, let's be honest. But I mean, 2021, it surely can't be any worse than 2020. I mean, that's got to be impossible.
Do you hear that?
Yes.
I'm knocking
Sorry.
on wood. Don't even say that. You're like tempting fate.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Take that back. Right, Lee. Thank you ever so much. As always, it's been a pleasure. One thing that I want to let everybody know is, yes, I'm going to provide your LinkedIn link underneath this interview. So we're going to get you a lot of requests. As well, if you have some questions, we will provide an email address that you can send any crew questions that you have to Lee. Not any crew questions, but crew travel questions. You have to verify that because you've had some very strange questions come through your way in the past. It has nothing to do with what you do. We do apologize.
I feel like a psychologist.
Well, you definitely are mine of a Sunday morning, I'll tell you that. Anyways, Lee, thank you again for your time. As always, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me once more.
You've been watching another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. Please tune in again next week.